Morning everybody, how are y'all doing today? I'm doing great because, in case you haven't heard by now, the sales numbers for the Steam Deck and its competitors like the Lenovo Legion Go and all that stuff have been not necessarily revealed, but at least estimated strongly. And basically, it's estimated that the Steam Deck has sold around 4 million units, and the rest of its competitors make up about 2 million sales or so. Now, the second I heard this news, I immediately thought, I can't wait for Harmon to make a video talking about how this proves the Steam Deck is a failure. And lo and behold, the video has been released, and it's about what you would expect. It's basically him comparing the Steam Deck sales to the Switch, when the Switch and the Steam Deck are different devices in different markets. They're not competitors at all. Just because they're both handhelds doesn't mean that they're competing against each other. And yet Harmon decided to take his victory lap anyway. Now you might be wondering, well, isn't 4 million sales pretty bad? You would think so, but I will explain why not later. Stick around to the end to find out, or something like that. I don't care, you can leave if you want. But you better come back. I see you right there. You've got a hangnail right now, don't you? It hurts like crazy. Well, guess what? I got a glass of lemonade right here. You know what happens when lemonade gets in an open wound? You're gonna find out. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into this.
And just like that, it's over. Like a fart in the wind. Just like that, the illusion has been broken, the spell has been destroyed, you know, it's over. Essentially.
Hey, he said the thing! He said it's over! What a great start to this video. Unfortunately, it's all downhill from here. Though I will say, I'm very excited to figure out which narrative was destroyed. Let's find out.
We all know the truth. We all know the actual numbers. We all know what happened. But we need to talk about it, you know? The narrative, when Valve Steam Deck came out, was that this was a major competitor to the Nintendo Switch. This had stomped the console in relevancy and power with its vast array of great games on Steam.
I mean, anybody who was saying that it was a competitor for the Switch is definitely wrong. I mean, I could see why people would think that when it was first announced. Obviously, it's a handheld and whatever. But I think we found out pretty quickly that they're very different devices. Obviously, the Steam Deck did not stomp the Switch in terms of relevancy. I don't think that was ever gonna happen. And I would seriously question anybody who thought that that was gonna happen. But in terms of raw power and how many games are available on the platform, yes, it absolutely wins in that regard. And the low sales don't really change that at all. Like, those are still facts regardless, so I don't know why this is even being brought up, but whatever.
Like, and not only was the Steam Deck out there, like, outperforming the Switch, it had competitors. Ooh, it had the ROG Ally, and it had the, I don't even know what else. Like, there were so many copycats. Clearly Nintendo was done. Clearly Nintendo couldn't compete, and what happens?
I mean, this is just the textbook definition of a straw man. You're creating an argument that nobody made so you can get a fake win. Who ever said that Nintendo was done because of the Steam Deck? I think everybody knew that Nintendo would be just fine. Also, I love how Harmon just admits how little he knows right there. He says the ROG Ally and I don't even know what else. Hooray. Like, you couldn't even be bothered to do research on the product that you hate so much. Harmon is a certified not D1 hater. Then again, I guess him doing research on these products would invalidate his hatred for them, so I guess he's got to do what he's got to do.
The Nintendo Switch 2 gets announced, and suddenly we get word from the industry that all of these Steam Deck knockoffs combined have sold a grand total of 6 million units. You know, Valve, ROG, like that other thing, the Lenovo, like, all of them combined have sold a total of 6 million units. Less than Nintendo Wii U. With all of their powers combined, they become Captain Flop.
I mean, if you assume that the Steam Deck is exactly like the Switch, then sure, it's a flop, but that's not what it is in the slightest. The Steam Deck is far more niche than the Switch. Also, it wasn't sold through retailers, like physically in stores. You had to buy it through Steam itself. Not to mention, that device has been majorly region locked. By that, I mean it was sold to very few countries. I mean, you couldn't even get this thing in Australia until November of 2024. Not to mention, this thing had very little marketing. There was the initial announcement, and that's basically it. The most I've seen since then is just ads on Steam itself. Also, you gotta think about it this way. Steam just hit a new peak of 40 million concurrent players. 4 million is 10% of that. So the deck managed to sell the equivalent of 10% of Steam's max concurrent player base, solely based on word of mouth and in very limited countries. That doesn't sound like a failure to me, but okay, sure, whatever. And then he compares them to the Wii U, an actual massive failure. Because guess what? It was marketed like crazy, just very poorly. A lot of people had no idea what the hell it was even supposed to be. And because of that, it only sold like a tenth of what the Wii sold. That is an actual failure.
You know, from the piece of hardware that was supposed to be the Switch killer. You know, now this needs to be brought up because the reason they're admitting this now is because they know that with the Switch 2 coming out, they won't be able to keep up the facade and like pretend that these things have any real audience. Like, the Switch 2 is going to demolish that that pathetic, small, minuscule number like immediately. You know,
I mean, God, I hope the Switch 2 sells more than 4 million units. But Harmon, you do realize that just because one product has a smaller audience than another, that doesn't mean it has no audience, right? Like, I still have an audience despite Alex and Frit being way bigger than me. And who in God's name was saying that the Steam Deck was going to be the Switch killer? Again, I think that's just the voices in your head telling you that. And he says they're admitting it now as if Valve is the one who gave these numbers. Like, no, these are estimates. I would imagine they're accurate, but at the end of the day, they're not from Valve. It's not Valve admitting that they lost or something. But why am I expecting Harmon to know what he's talking about? You know what? Honestly, that's my bad. My expectations were too high.
It's like, ooh, unbelievable. Like, this 6 million, after all of that hype, all of that, like bigger than the iPhone, like,
okay, so you may be wondering why he's talking about being bigger than the iPhone. The reason is, I guarantee he's referencing when Review Tech USA said that, which, of course, I just tried to look that up and then realized that Rich deleted his channel, so I can't. But yeah, Rich said something along the lines of the Steam Deck is the most important technological device since the iPhone or something like that, which the Steam Deck is cool and all, but I wouldn't take Rich too seriously, honestly. Like, I know he does a lot of drugs and all, but he must have been smoking something extra special when he was comparing that thing to the iPhone. And I think the fact that Harmon took that seriously, and just anything Rich says seriously, shows a lot.
It's unbelievable to me. Unbelievable to me that a product that was set up this much would fall this hard. But with the Switch 2 coming out, it's going to be harder and harder to keep up this narrative that Nintendo is not relevant or that nobody talks about them, because that's not true.
How does it always come back to Nintendo somehow being irrelevant? Who was saying that? Honestly, find me somebody who said that Nintendo was irrelevant because of the Steam Deck. Find them, and I will happily make a video talking about it, because they are on the opposite end of the spectrum that you're on. They are the other side of the coin, if you will. And Harmon, of course Nintendo is still talked about. I mean, for God's sakes, you exist. What's the saying? If you have 100 fans, I'm the biggest one. If you have one fan, I'm him. If you have no fans, I'm dead. That's how Harmon is with Nintendo. As long as this man walks the earth, Nintendo will be talked about. It doesn't matter if they shut down tomorrow and get wiped from everyone's memories. Like, even if you tried to wipe Harmon's memory, it would be like something out of a movie where he would see the Mario hat hanging, and then he would stare at it, and then he would have like a Vietnam flashback, and then he would suddenly get all his memories back. Damn, I should write a movie about that. I would make Avengers Endgame's box office look like pennies.
Right. Time Magazine is doing articles about Mario's 40th anniversary. Right? You know, the Switch 2 is getting a direct in April. right? We're getting a Pokemon presentation today in like half an hour, right? As I record this. Like, you're going to tell me that the Steam Deck is going to outperform Pokemon. You know, like, there are probably versions of Pokemon Gen 10 that will sell more than all of those pieces of hardware combined.
I mean, yes, I agree, but again, you're back to arguing against a person that doesn't exist. You're making up arguments in your mind and then getting mad at them. It's like a way more depressing version of when you win the argument that you were having with somebody earlier, but you're like in the shower, and you're like, damn it, I should have said that. Like, who is saying that the Steam Deck would outsell Pokemon? No, obviously not. And wow, Time Magazine is writing about Mario's 40th birthday. You mean, like, the biggest franchise in all of gaming? Probably the most famous video game character of all time? You know, he's hitting that big 4-0 and people are talking about it? Wow, color me shocked. Like, why are we comparing the Steam Deck popularity to Mario? Like, what's next? Are we gonna compare the Wii U to Minecraft? Like, how does that make any sense?
There are probably Pokemon Amiibo that sell more than 6 million units, right? Like, you're telling me that the Steam Deck is gonna outperform Pokemon. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if this presentation gets more views than that gets sales. But, like, I mean, the Switch 2 reveal did. You know, like, it just...
So now we're comparing sales of consoles to how many views a video gets on YouTube. What are we doing? And then he brings up Pokemon again, like nobody's talking about Pokemon. Who said the Steam Deck would outsell Pokemon? And again, what do YouTube views have to do with this? The GTA 6 trailer has more views than the Switch has sales. Does that mean the Switch is a failure? The goalpost has been moved so much for what is a success to these guys that it has now been pushed out of the stadium and into traffic. This video is making me want to stand in traffic in Minecraft while none of the cars are moving. Yeah. Please don't take away my ads. I have a family to feed, man. Like, look at this. It's me, and then I got this little puffin dude that I got in Iceland, and then just this little dog that I made over Christmas. Like, man.
Like, I'm just kind of like, just baffled by the reality of the situation, and I'm the person that was like calling this out from the beginning. You know, I was talking about how the numbers didn't make any sense and how like Valve was faking their sales numbers on the sales charts, and how nobody outside of like an extremely niche dedicated audience that needed to downplay Nintendo like was really all that interested or enthusiastic about this hardware to begin with. You know, I was talking about that. Even I am kind of shocked by these numbers, right?
So you admit that it's a very niche product. Congrats, you got that 1 point, but then you immediately ruin it by using it to console war, saying that people only bought the Steam Deck to downplay Nintendo. Personally, I bought mine because I wanted to play my games portably, and I didn't want to buy a laptop, but who knows, maybe that's just me and the other 3,999,999 people who bought it, all just secretly despise Nintendo. But what makes even less sense than that is the fact that he says that Valve is faking their numbers. How? They never came out and said this thing has sold like 10 million units or something like that. Does he mean they were faking the deck being in the top sellers on Steam? Somehow I doubt that. That sounds highly illegal. Not to mention your lack of proof doesn't make the argument look too good. But what am I saying? Proof is a thing of the past. You can just say anything on social media now and it's true. At least in the minds of some very delusional people.
And this is the reality of the situation, is that nobody can come in and just sell more than Nintendo. You know, those days are over, okay? You know, Sony, like, was able to do it by blowing a ton of money back in the 90s, but, like, it's not viable anymore. It's not viable anymore. And they were never able to, like, even really outperform Nintendo as a whole because of the handheld division, right? Like, what exactly are modern hardware manufacturers gonna do to compete with Nintendo? You know, when I look at Demish and like when I see him like, oh man, look at this emulator, like this Chinese thing I bought, like I'm just like, that's the 5th one you've shown off on this channel this week. You know, like if this hardware was so reliable, if it was so good, if it has so many great games, why are you not just sticking to that hardware?
I mean, I am sticking to my hardware. My PC is reliable, it has all the games I want to play, including Nintendo games, and I don't need anything else, so yeah, I am sticking to it. Also, Harmon, you mentioned the 90s with Sony and Nintendo competing. Are you still stuck in that time? Because you're asking what hardware manufacturers are gonna do to compete with Nintendo. In case you hadn't noticed, nothing. Nobody's really trying to compete with Nintendo. Nintendo's doing their own thing. And despite what you say, the Steam Deck is not trying to compete with the Switch, nor is PlayStation or Xbox. They are doing their entirely own things. If the Xbox handheld rumors are true, then sure, that would probably be competition for the Switch, because, you know, it would actually fall into the realm of console handhelds and not portable PCs. Then again, who knows? Maybe the Xbox handheld will just be a Steam Deck, but with Windows. You can play your Game Pass games and all your Xbox stuff on there, and also have Steam installed. I mean, who the hell even knows at this point? I don't, but at least I'm smart enough to admit it.
And the answer is that it's cheap, it's disposable, it breaks easily, you know, it's just an inferior alternative to what you can get on the Switch. And that is the realization that a lot of people have come to over the past 20 years, is that these other products are not on the same level of quality as Nintendo's brand. And that is going to lead to the Switch 2 to be an extremely well-received, popular piece of hardware right out of the gate, all while the Valve Steam Deck just languishes in obscurity. Like, this thing has been forgotten. I've talked about this, like, a lot in the past, but, like, it's like the Power World of, like, gaming hardware. Like, you don't see anybody talk about it unless they're trying to downplay Nintendo Switch.
I mean, irony just doesn't get much better than this now, does it? Nobody talks about the Steam Deck in Power World anymore, yet here you are making a video on it. It's like, remember how I said earlier that as long as Harmon's around, Nintendo will be talked about? It's the same way with the Steam Deck and Power World. And Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate, all these games that he hates will continue to be talked about simply because he continues to make videos on how they're not talked about. And even more ironically, he does this because he's trying to downplay them to defend Nintendo. There's so much irony, it is leaking out of my screen. And even worse, by this logic, the Switch has been forgotten as well, because I don't hear people, like, actively talk about it much anymore, unless they're talking about the Switch 2. Does that mean that the product is obscure or forgotten? No, it's just not, like, super popular mainstream anymore in terms of, like, people talking about it. I mean, I don't hear people talking about Tears of the Kingdom anymore. Does that mean it's irrelevant? No. When products are new, people talk about them more. This happens to literally everything, but apparently this only matters or applies when it's for things that Harmon doesn't like. Flawless logic, just completely bulletproof.
You know, outside of that context, nobody really cares, because this thing had no reason to exist. You know, it didn't do anything new or interesting, like the technology wasn't interesting, PC gamers could just play on their PCs, you know, like, why exactly was I supposed to be excited about the deck?
Because it allows you to bring your entire Steam library portably without the need for a laptop. The deck is far cheaper than most gaming laptops out there, and it's in a form factor similar to the Switch, but it still has the full customizability of a PC. You can still use any controller with it, keyboard and mouse, hook it up to any monitor. A piece of technology doesn't have to be new or interesting to sell well or be useful. I mean, for God's sakes, look at the Switch 2. It literally just looks like the Switch, but it's using magnets instead of slides and locks for the controllers. I wouldn't really call that new or interesting. And yet, like you said, it's probably gonna sell extremely well. You don't need to reinvent the wheel to have a good product. And you, of all people, asking why you were supposed to be excited about the Steam Deck, dude, you were never gonna be excited for it. Like, let's be real, you are the last person who should be asking that. The people who were supposed to be excited for it were the people who wanted to get into PC gaming, but maybe it was too expensive, or people like myself who already had a PC and who didn't want to get a laptop but wanted to play their stuff portably. Those are the people who were supposed to be excited for it. It's really not that complicated. I hope you can understand.
And the answer is there was no real reason besides it's Valve, you know? Like, aside from this idea that, like, Valve's gonna be the savior of gaming. Valve hasn't saved shit. You know, all they've done was prolong the death of, like, PC gaming for, like, another 20 years. You know? Like, PC gaming is really something that should have died back in the 90s, right?
PC gaming should have died in the 90s. Yeah, you wish it would have, don't you? PC gaming is going nowhere. Like I said before, it just broke another concurrent player record. Steam alone cracked 40 million people. It's only getting more popular. You can cry about it all you want, but the steampunks, as you like to say, are here to stay.
The Xbox took everything that a gaming PC could do, made it more affordable, and gave it a better control scheme, right? Like, the original Xbox killed PC gaming. The only thing keeping it alive now is porn and Valve's weird militant fanboys who still genuinely try and gaslight themselves into thinking that, like, Half-Life 3 is in development. Like,
that is wild. I never thought I would hear Harmon say that the original Xbox killed PC gaming. I thought he would have said the GameCube or something, but screw it, I'm happy to be surprised. But here's my question. How can the Xbox kill PC gaming, but then PC gaming is still alive by your own admission? I don't think living works how you think it works. Also, no, the original Xbox did not do everything a PC could do. Was it more affordable? Sure. But you want to know what product just came out a couple years ago that made PC gaming more affordable, made it portable, and gave it a different control scheme? That's right, the Steam Deck. Almost everything that you just described the Xbox doing 24 years ago, the Steam Deck just did, except to a better extent. Because unlike an Xbox, the Steam Deck can actually do everything that a normal PC can. And while Prawn is definitely not saving PC gaming or keeping it alive, it sure is nice. And I know you probably look at a lot of that stuff, Harmon, so I guess you're welcome. I mean, a lot of that stuff is made on PCs, so I don't know why you'd want the platform that provides you with all that stuff to go under, but who knows? Maybe he's changed. Maybe he's no longer a gooner. Nah, what am I saying?
Imagine waiting 20 years to find out whether, like, how Gordon Freeman beats the Combine. Like, who can, like, I should have played Half-Life 3 in 2007. Okay, that's kind of my mindset on that. That is, I can't imagine waiting that long for a follow-up of a game without moving on, without losing faith in the creators, without losing faith, like,
I mean, it really just shows how great those original games were, huh? But also, Delta pointed this out on stream. I didn't even think about this. But nowadays, Valve really only makes games when they can innovate on something. So like with Deadlock, for example, it's like this mashup of a shooter with League of Legends. And honestly, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it before. Their last game before that, I believe, was Half-Life Alyx, which was a massive step forward for VR games. Plus, it's funny that he says this when Nintendo is just sitting on franchises that haven't had games in decades. Like Earthbound and Punch-Out, which I'm sure plenty of people would love to see more games of, but they're just not doing it. Keep on holding out hope, all you people who love old game franchises. I'm sure the game will definitely come out soon. Maybe, probably, probably not.
The reality of the situation is, PC gaming has been on the decline for a long time, which is why Valve constantly keeps trying to put out this mediocre hardware, desperate to try and infiltrate the console space, only to fail each and every time. They don't have the capability to produce hardware that's going to compete in the market space.
Again, how is it dying when it's reaching new peaks in players? Something is not adding up here. Let me guess, Valve's faking the player numbers as well, because that's definitely something they would do. And again, why does he think that just because they're making a handheld that they're automatically trying to compete with consoles? They're not. The deck is not a console, it's a PC. They're not trying to compete with the Switch or the Xbox or the PlayStation or any of that. In fact, they're not really trying to compete with anybody. It's more so other brands are trying to compete with them like Lenovo. And given that the Steam Deck is still being made and sold in more countries than it was previously, by the way, like its market has expanded, something tells me it's selling a lot better and is a lot more successful than some of Valve's other hardware attempts. Like, just because their other hardware failed doesn't mean this one has.
It's not reliable enough. It doesn't innovate enough. It's not recognizable enough. Nobody wants to see this. And I do think this really needs to be, like, shoved down some people's throats. Valve is not a very good hardware developer. They are not good at developing software. All they are at this stage is Walmart. You know, they are a Walmart where you can go in and buy cheap disposable products on that are easily accessible, that you can just download like on the spot. Like, it is the video game equivalent of Walmart, you know, as opposed to like Nintendo offering like a premium service that caters to like all manner of sophisticated, intelligent, you know, just a higher quality of people. Like, Steam is Walmart.
I honestly can't believe what I'm hearing right now. I legitimately forgot that he said this. Steam is Walmart and Nintendo caters to higher quality people. What does that even mean? I never thought I would see somebody prop themselves up as a higher tier individual for being on a certain gaming platform, but I mean, I guess here we are. And I love how he describes them as being Walmart, and then he says that's because they have cheap games that you can just buy and download right there, as if that's somehow a bad thing. Like, I'm sorry that we get games cheaper than you do on the Switch. Damn, guys, what an L for Steam. They're like Walmart in that their stuff is cheap and there's a wide variety of things you can buy there. How terrible. And what about Nintendo is premium? Like, what service? Are you talking about Switch Online? Because that is the worst online service out of all the consoles. It lacks features in 2025 that were standard in 2012. Honestly, explain to me what is premium about Switch Online. I was gonna make a joke like, oh, the only thing that's premium about Switch Online is this, but no, there's nothing premium about it. It is post-mium. Get it? Because post. But yeah, anyway, there's a little bit left in the video, but it's just basically him insulting PC gamers a bunch and then saying that Valve couldn't compete with the Nokia N-Gage, which I had to look that up because I had no idea what it was. You old people watching this probably know, though. It's this thing. But yeah, I think I've rotted my brain enough for one day. And this video is more than long enough, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, as always. Look at that, I posted not a week after my last video. Hooray. Thank you, Harmon, for coming in clutch and just having the worst, most incorrect takes possible. I really appreciate it. Just like I appreciate it if you made it to the end of the video. If you did, all I ask is that you like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't like it, subscribe if you want to see more. Join us every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for Salt Streams, and I will catch you all next time.